Hello, and welcome to the Art Ambassador Radio Show. This is your host, Gwenda Joyce. I'm coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. I'm just back from the most exciting art event of the year, the Miami Art Fairs. Every year in December, art collectors, gallery owners, art world professionals, and art lovers of all kind head to Miami to look at art. I was there myself, and I will bring you some of the excitement and discovery of Miami Art Week to you today in conversations with and interviews with four of the gallery owners who were at the fairs. We will hear directly from several of the gallery owners who participate every year. Bernice Steinbaum of Bernice Steinbaum Gallery in Florida, Mark Borghi of Mark Borghi Fine Art, who has three galleries, one in Palm Beach, Florida, and two in New York. Jean-Luc Richard of Galerie Richard in Paris and New York, and B.J. Kocen of Glave Kocen Gallery, who's from Richmond, Virginia. All of these galleries bring their artwork and their most exciting artworks to participate in the many art fairs in Miami Beach. They go to the art fairs to give greater exposure to their artists' work. We will hear from them about what they choose to bring and how they do while they're there. Miami in December has become such a destination for art that in 1 week, a gallery in a booth can have up to 75,000 people passing by your booth and looking at your art. That's more exposure than most galleries get in 1 year. So, of course, they're really excited to be there and to meet the public and get reactions and make placements for their artists. People come to the art fairs to discover new art, to be inspired, have fun, and to take home or add to their collections. And a lot of museum personnel come and add to their museum collections as well. This is where they'll see the latest artwork and find out about new artists that they're not familiar with. The audience is made up of people from all over the world. It's a destination not only for Americans, but from people who come from Latin America and the Caribbean, Asia, and Europe. In December in Miami, the weather's great, so it's a good place to come. And Art Basel was the one who decided to start this phenomenon in the year 2000. Over the past 15 years, the entire art scene in metropolitan Miami has developed as a result. And galleries have started there, moved there, and it's known as one of the top destinations in the country now. The main art fair of Art Miami Week is called Art Basel Miami Beach. This fair started in Miami over 15 years ago and was populated by the top blue chip galleries from around the world. Everything from classic art to the outrageous is shown, and there is a lot of outrageous. These galleries are juried into the show, and they make up the highest of the high end. They bring blue chip art to see and to show, and collectors come to buy. They flock there to have their pick first. They also have curated shows at Art Basel of selected galleries that are considered noteworthy but less commercially viable. So they're taking chances and showing art that isn't as dependent on its price tag. Even if you're not a collector, everyone is welcome. So it's the best place to see museum quality art and all in one place. As a result of the success of 15 years of Art Basel, Miami now is one of the main centers, and smaller satellite art fairs like Pulse and Nava have started up. I go every year to catch up with my favorite gallery owners and their artists and to discover new art that's coming down the pipeline. My first visit to Art Basel was way back in the late 70s when the fair was only held in Basel, Switzerland. It was an eye-opener to see so much original contemporary art of museum quality from the top European galleries. One of the most memorable things about that I remember is seeing TVs playing video And this was artwork by the originator of video art, Namjoon Paik, and he was recording Charlotte Moorman, who was playing the violin in the nude. Naturally, it was a sensation. There were crowds of people hanging around. So several years later, when the idea caught on, it was brought to the U.S. by John Wilson, who put on a show for Prince in Boston. John then moved the art fair to Chicago in 1980 and opened it up to all types of higher level galleries. I participated in that very first Chicago International Art Expo by bringing artists from California to show, which is what I was showing at the time with my original gallery. To entice people to come to this event, the organizers decided to make opening night free. And you know what it did? Over 30,000 people attended. The interest in contemporary art was overwhelming, and I was inspired. The next year, I moved to Chicago and opened up my first gallery there. I write about the significance of art fairs in my book, 9 Steps to Artistic Freedom, Living the Artist's Life and Making It Sustainable. I talk about how art fairs have changed the art scene and how they affect the galleries that participate. You can order my book, which just came out this fall, at bit.ly/order9steps. That's bit.ly/order9steps. Make sure to read about that part about the art fairs. It's a real phenomenon. Today on the Art Ambassador radio show, we're going to talk to 4 gallery owners who participated in the art fairs in Art Miami last week, or 2 weeks ago. My first conversation is with Bernice Steinbaum, who was a gallery owner in New York for many years and is now in Florida. Bernice had a groundbreaking gallery. She was one of the first art dealers to show many women artists starting in the late 70s and 80s when it was rare to show women artists. She has also shown many artists of color, showcasing artists who are undervalued and underrepresented. She's embraced many different traditions in art, such as fiber, which again has been considered marginal. A lot of these artists that Bernice has represented have gone on to become highly recognized and valued. They're very collectible and they're fantastic artists. Bernice's artwork is always challenging established conventions, and she allows us to broaden what we like and gives us a chance to see much more than the norm. Bernice is also used to challenging the racial and gender inequalities of the world of the time. She moved her gallery to Miami in 2000 and has focused on artists working with environmental art themes. At Art Miami, her booth was one of the most exciting because of its representation of multimedia artworks and a variety of media. We're going to take a break now, and when we come back, we're going to talk to Bernice Steinbaum directly and ask her about what she brought, and ask her about her new gallery in Coconut Grove. So stay with us. We're going to take a short break. This is Gwenda Joyce. I'm your host of the Art Ambassador radio show, coming to you live on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Hello, and welcome back to the Art Ambassador radio show. I am your host, Gwenda Joyce. We're coming to you live on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. A few weeks ago, when I was in Miami for the art fairs, I went to one of the biggest and longest running satellite fairs, which is Art Miami. It's also one of the most popular. This year, it moved to a different location in Herald Plaza, and it seemed to allow about 30% more space for more galleries to participate. They also have a fair right next door under the same ownership and management called Context. So at this fair, it really draws a lot of people. The fairs are in open tents, and walls are constructed and high-intensity light is installed. The aisles are wide and there's plenty of room for people to wander through, and it gets crowded, especially on opening night. So, one of my guests who was at that fair is Bernice Steinbaum. Her gallery is in Coconut Grove, just outside of Miami. And as I was walking through, I saw these huge, colorful trophy heads by Miami artist Enrique Gomez de Molina, and they were causing a sensation. Everyone, including myself, was stopped in their tracks. So I just had to go in and talk to Bernice about what she was showing. So, Bernice, welcome to the program. So great to have you here.
Thank you.
Bernice, as I was saying, I was just stopped in my tracks by your artist and your booth. Can you tell us what you decided to bring to Art Miami this year?
I have been very interested in recyclable materials and artists who use them, as well as nature and the landscape, which I hope our great-grandchildren will have in the future. In Miami, we're dealing with a lot of things about seawalls and the level of the water rising, as we are with the heat changing all of those things, and the country being concerned with environmental issues. So I bought Enrique, who uses beetle wings to make his sculpture, and the sculpture uses recycled material solely. And they are quite large, and it's become my mark in Florida that I use him to show people where my booth is.
Well, he is such a showstopper, and his beetle wings, that's an unusual material for making art. They were the most colorful, brilliant, unabashed forms of artwork because they're big trophy heads and they're spectacular. They're gorgeous.
Thank you.
How do you?
Those are the natural colors. The artist buys them by the pound. As far as I know, he's the only one in the United States working with the material. He uses glass eyes, and he tells you it's his plea not to kill animals in our environment, but rather, I'll make you a wonderful trophy you can hang over your fireplace.
Well, they are beautiful and spectacular, and I imagine they are all going to new homes now. Is that right?
Well, one is going to Nova Scotia, another one is going to Canada, and two others are maybe going to remain here in Florida.
Well, that sounds like some wonderful new homes for the artwork. Now, you had other artists using unusual materials there at the booth. One was Deborah Simons. Tell me about her work.
Yes. Deborah makes animals as a way of her telling you animals are as much part of our environment as we are. She makes the fabric that looks like fur, and it's very seductive. Everybody touches it. And she uses ceramic for the head, and then she embroiders the inside of the animal on the outside to remind us that animals have hearts, lungs, spines, veins, and have feelings, and not to mistreat animals because we need them in nature.
We do, and her message is so clear. Her animals are on, they're maybe about 20 inches high. They were shown on pedestals, and they're made of a material, a fake fur that is so, warm and cuddly and fuzzy. And Deborah's message really communicates the importance of preserving and honoring and valuing our natural environment. Another artist you had, Bernice, is Carrie C., whose work was fascinating to me. Well, Bernice had another artist, Carrie C., whose work looks like paintings from a distance, and yet there's a softness to the painting. So as I walked up to it, I was about 15 feet away. I walked up to it and got closer and closer, all the time thinking, this can't be painting. It's too soft, but it just looks just like a painting. And as I got closer, I realized that about half of the painting was oil paint, and the other half was stitchery right on top of the canvas. So Carrie C. has an amazing way of integrating her different materials, the paint and the fiber, to create a beautiful image. And she is also communicating this idea that there is value, so much value to the environment, and that we need to look closely at it. These artists are using wonderful materials and making us look closely at the artwork. At the art fairs, there are hundreds of people milling around, and collectors come in early and they're ready to make a decision. They need to be ready to make a decision if there's an artist or an artwork they want. Chances are high that if they don't move quickly, the pieces will be no longer available. By the second day, so many artworks had already been sold. There are some people, of course, who like to wait till the last minute. We have more excitement from the Miami Art Fairs with our future guests. And Mark Borghi of Mark Borghi Fine Art is going to be my next guest. And he has a completely different kind of gallery and a different kind of show. Stay with us. This is the Art Ambassador Radio Show. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back to the Art Ambassador Radio Show. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, and we're coming to you live on BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. We're talking about the art fairs in Miami during Miami Art Week in early December. And my next conversation today is with Mark Borghi of Mark Borghi Fine Art, who has galleries in New York, Bridgehampton, and Palm Beach. Mark's gallery stands out because he represents both modern and contemporary artists, which means that many of the artists are no longer living and that they have documented art historical relevance. Mark's booth at Art Miami showed a lot of work from the secondary market, which means that some of the paintings came out of private collections. He had a very exciting booth. I was really taken by it because he had two spaces, one in which there was a couch where he could sit down and talk to people about the art, and the second in which he had a booth exclusively dedicated to presenting 13 female abstract expressionist artists. And the show was called 13 Women Who Broke All the Rules. So Mark, welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Thanks for asking me. Happy to be here.
So Mark, tell me about your show called 13 Women Who Broke All the Rules. Well, what was it and why did you decide to bring it to Art Miami?
So about 5 years ago, the Denver Art Museum decided they wanted to focus on female painters of the 50s. And that became a rather important museum exhibition, which we actually sold them their Big Elaine de Kooning. So we were kind of involved with that project from the beginning, and that was so incredibly successful. That catalog is in its third printing. So I got to thinking about this over the summer, and I said I would like to present a mini version of it in Miami. So that was really the impetus for the mini show, so to speak.
Well, female abstract expressionists really are the rage now, and some of the names are quite well known, like Helen Frankenthaler and Lee Krasner, but there are others who are lesser known. Who are some of the lesser known artists who are still quite noteworthy that you feel are really worthy of attention and very collectible?
So yeah, I mean, so you have to think if one could put themselves in a time warp, go back to the 1950s, and you have Jackson Pollock, you have Franz Klein, you have de Kooning, and then you have this group of women, beginning, I guess, with Joan Mitchell, Frankenthaler, obviously Lee Krasner, who was Pollock's wife, and they were all just really treated shabbily. I mean, they just didn't get their credit. So, so you have other painters like Charlotte Park, you have another artist by the name of Michael West, who's actually born Corinne West, but at the suggestion of Borghi, changed her name to Michael so she could achieve some fame. So, it's kind of like, Mary Abbott, who's with de Kooning as well. So these are really good painters. They really are. But given the circumstance of when they were born and at the time that they were painting, so to speak, they just didn't get the credit. Everyone to a degree knows who Joan Mitchell, Helen Frankenthaler, or Krasner. Krasner, sadly, is still stigmatized by the fact, that's Pollock's wife. Well, Lee Krasner was a really great painter long before she met Jackson Pollock. So, and Elaine de Kooning, Bill's wife, another artist that's really of interest to us. We actually represent a part of her estate. So it was kind of like, yes, 50 years later, do they deserve more recognition? It's just a shame that it's taken this long.
So how are they doing in terms of receiving the collector's attention and the museum attention for their work? I think you probably have a direct line.
Well, I've been doing this for 40 years, and for the last, I want to say 5 years, the collector's focus has shifted to the women, so to speak, because you cannot get a good Klein or a good de Kooning unless you have a certain bank account, which 99% of the collecting public does not. So if you wanted to spend, $25,000 and get something of the period that was big and beautiful, you were just shut out, basically. So these women, there are actually collectors who are focusing exclusively on just women painters. So, yeah, going forward, it's maybe the time has finally come, so to speak.
Well, I certainly hope so. It's well deserved. And can you tell me, are more women collecting art as well? Is that part of the collector base that you see going to collect these women artists?
So normally it's normally a husband and a wife situation, and they're both basically on the same page when it comes to this. I think the wives are happy that the husbands are interested, and it's just kind of a, it's a broad-based appeal, It's going forward. These women, you have Grace Hardigan, you have Pearl Fine, you have Mercedes Matter, you have, there's probably 10 solid painters in the 1950s who were there and who are important, yet the market hasn't really caught up with them, but the market always catches up with them,
Yes, I think that's probably true. And it's the wise collector who gets there first, who gets there before the market catches up with them. So, Mark, the catalog that you put together is titled 13 Women Who Broke All the Rules. Can you tell me why you titled it that?
When we started, we start working on our booth for Miami basically in June, thinking about it. In July, and so by August, we've decided this was going to be the one, segment of what we were going to show. So I get deeply immersed in these things. So I was doing some work and I ran across this quote from Helen Frankenthaler, and which said the first rule is there is no rules. And there you go. That's it. That's the title of this show, 13 Women Who Broke All the Rules, So that's where it came from. It's derived from a quote from Frankenthaler.
Well, that's terrific. And these women I know had endured hardship through their careers because of their gender, and they fought back with courage and creativity. And it's great to see that their work is now getting the attention and the collector recognition and the acquisitions that they deserve. And thanks to you, Mark, for bringing it to the public. And thanks for being here with us today. We're going to take a short break and come right back. This is the Art Ambassador Radio Show. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, and we're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Stay with us. Hello, and welcome back to the Art Ambassador Radio Show. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce. We're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. We're talking today with some art dealers who were at the Miami Art Fairs, the biggest art fair event of the year, held in December. One of those fairs is called the Untitled Art Fair, and it's one of the youngest fairs at age only 6. From the beginning, the Untitled Art Fair intended to be a little different because it hired curators to select the art and an architect to design the space. The tent for Untitled is right on the beach, on Miami Beach, and it was designed with big, wide aisles that are put together at an angle and a tent that allows light to filter through. And the galleries in the show are selected by an independent curator, Omar Lopez Shadbou, and he invites 2 other curators to review the submissions. And the curators actually make the submissions of what they want the galleries to bring. So today I have as my guest Jean-Luc Richard of Galerie Richard in New York City. Hello, Richard. Jean-Luc, thanks for being with us.
It's a pleasure to be invited, and it was nice talking already in the art fair.
Yes, well, you had a very busy time and a successful show. What I enjoyed so much about your show was that you had a one-person exhibit of paintings by David Ryan, and an American artist who I wasn't familiar with. And as I was looking at the work, I got up close. It's bold-shaped canvases, bold colors. And you came up to me and you said, very kindly and gently, don't forget to take a look at the side and the edges. And I really appreciated that you made me stop and look at them. So Jean-Luc, tell me a little bit about the artist David Ryan and why you have been working with him and chose to bring him to Untitled.
Well, I've been working with him since 2004. I've made first a group show about pop-up. I call it pop abstraction in Las Vegas, because there were a group of Las Vegas artists that very few people were aware of, that I found very interesting, and it was the first time to be exhibited in Europe. And so David Ryan specifically, what surprised me was his ability to move from a two-dimensional drawing to a three-physical painting. It's a painting on a wall, but there, as you said, there is a three-dimensional dimension, and he can do that only on his mind, without any software. He has this kind of ability, like for people who play with cubic cubes, to create different layers and make a kind of three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. And I think this capacity to play in 3 dimensions only with the mind I was a little bit surprised. And he has a beautiful sense of color, arrangement of colors. I'm always surprised by his range of colors and his combinations. It's always unexpected, and as an art dealer, it's always boring. You get bored after a moment when you see most of people using the same rules, the same game. They don't take so much risk. And he's really a kind of person who enjoys to experiment and to surprise himself.
Well, I certainly felt that by looking at his work. And another thing about his work, I thought perhaps it was wood that was highly painted. And you told me that his materials were, in fact, something quite unusual for making art.
Yes. Well, I'm in 2000, around 2000, 2001, 2002, especially because of an exhibition called Post-Digital Painting at the Cranbrook Art Museum, I became fully aware that the new painters, the new generation of painters in the 21st century, their first tool was not so much the work on a design on paper, but the first basic work, the first idea came on the computer. For many of them, and as everybody else in the world, for whatever you do, you spend a lot of time in front of your computer, and these artists were doing the same from the beginning. And I could understand that their vision, when you see a screen now, instead of the colors are quite different from a photography on paper. You can reproduce it, really, but you can experience it. And when you experience it 8 hours a day, minimum, it makes a big change in your appreciation of colors. And they have been using computers. That's the first generation who has been using computers, and so it's a big change in the history of human beings. And so I was presumably thinking that we could see this change also in art in a very dramatic way, and that's why I've been interested in this artist specifically.
Jean-Luc, you have a gallery in New York, and your wife runs the gallery in Paris. So I'm curious to know if you share artists and how this works to have galleries across the pond.
Yes, as much as possible, we try to share the artists, so that way we get what we call synergies. So when we make one advertising for an artist, it's for the two galleries together, and people get, and we can. But the big change is it's completely different, a different job to have one gallery and to have two galleries. These two galleries, you are obliged to go very strategic in your way to organize your exhibition, you organize a strategy for the artist with participating in art fairs, and so the timing is completely different. You work with two teams at the same time, so we work with 2 times more people at least. And so that you have these positive synergies, and that's why it's much better for me to exhibit them one time in Paris, one time in New York, or the opposite way, so that people get busy. Artists know in advance that they will be able to be exhibited every year, and so we keep contact with collectors much more often, and it's very important because collectors can move easily from one artist to another, and art critics and the art world in general. As long as we communicate 2 times more, it's much more efficient. And when you use the social media, it's for both galleries. So in many aspects, you have a lot of synergies when you work with 2 galleries. And it's a much better life because you travel much more.
Well, that's a fascinating way to have a gallery. I'm so glad I had a chance to meet you at the Untitled Art Fair, and I thank you for being on the show today. This is the Art Ambassador Radio Show. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, and we are coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Stay with us. And welcome back to the Art Ambassador Radio Show. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce, and we're coming to you live on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. We've been talking today with art gallery owners who have been at the Miami Art Fairs. And my final guest today is BJ Kocen from Glave Kocen Gallery in Richmond, Virginia. Glave Kocen Gallery was at the Aqua Art Fair this year. And the Aqua Art Fair is really a fun art fair. It's a little more accessible than some of the others. It actually takes place in a hotel that's a 2-story hotel with an open atrium. And what happens is that all the rooms in the hotel are cleared out of furniture and everything, and they're turned into mini galleries. So each gallery has a chance to have its own space. And the unusual thing about Aqua is that it also had some one-person shows of individual artists. So BJ was really excited to be there at Aqua, and I'd like to say hello and welcome to BJ Kocen from the Glave Kocen Gallery. Thanks for being with us here today.
Gwenda, thank you so much for having me. And I got to tell you, I've really enjoyed your other panelists, listening to them and hear their stories and what they brought. And I just want you to know that you truly are an art ambassador, because Jennifer and I were just, stuck in our booth, and we didn't really get to see some other things that were out there. So it was really interesting to hear some of the experiences you had.
Well, I love being able to go around and see all the galleries. I'm really lucky to be able to do that. But your booth at the Aqua Art Fair really stood out to me, BJ. So tell me what it was like for you. Tell me what you decided to bring to Aqua and why you decided to go there in the first place.
My pleasure. Well, it was a blast for us. So yes, Jennifer and myself, we're a husband-wife team out of Richmond, Virginia, as you said. And it just so happens that 2017 was our 10-year anniversary, Gwenda. And the amazing thing about this too, serendipity-wise, was that we had one final long-term goal on our list, and that was to participate in the Aqua Art Fair. And so we were able to cross that one off the list this year. We were so excited to participate in Aqua. It was a blast. And what we did was we brought down 4 of our figurative artists, and we called the show Configuration. And what our idea was just to really show some great portrait artists, but presenting their work in entirely different ways. Whether it be really flat surfaces, but very vibrant palettes like Rob Browning, or very textural collage element work from Josh George, who's also a Richmond artist. We also brought Stephen Walker with us, a Virginia artist, and we had Christopher Peter with us out of Arizona. So 4 really distinct artists presenting portraiture in very different ways. And it was a blast, very well received.
Good for you. Well, I imagine that means, in terms of well received, that you found some collectors and some of the buying public who were interested in taking the work home with them. So is that right? Did the sales turn out to be as good as the contacts for you at something like the Aqua Art Fair?
It did. I mean, we were, we are your proverbial greenhorn. It was our first time, and we were just sort of gobsmacked at some of the responses we got, because there was a lot of people that were saying that they enjoyed our artists more so than some throughout the course of the entire Miami Art Fair. People were saying that they enjoyed our booth as exceptional among the other exceptional artists showing at the Aqua Art Fair. So we were very tickled with that response. It did translate into sales, and I'm happy to report, Gwenda, that we're still having sales. We're working on a commission today, as a matter of fact, that definitely came out of our legwork in Miami.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. And I hear that from a lot of galleries, that it's the residual and the follow-up activity that really sustains your activity while you're at the art fair. And that's one of the things that's so important about actually showing up and being there in Miami. What I liked about your booth was the fact that you focused on only 4 artists. You had a number of works by each artist, so I could get a sense of what each artist was about, and each one was distinctive. And I also liked that you had the more figurative representational element to your direction, because that wasn't widely represented in the art fair. And I really got a sense of the aesthetic you were looking for, the quality level, the price range. and that made it very cohesive and just easier for a viewer like myself. So, BJ, I'm sure that this is just part of what you show in the gallery. Can you tell me about some of the other artists or other directions that you have if I were to go to Richmond and be in your gallery? What else would I see?
Absolutely. Well, absolutely, and thanks for the opportunity to mention that. And thank you, by the way. That really means a lot coming from you, because I know you've got a lot of experience in the art world, not only vending, but just being a participant. So I really appreciate that you really got where we were coming from. If you were to come to Richmond, you would see more of the same, of course, not just focused on portraiture, but we consider ourselves a transitional gallery. So we have a sensibility that, really sort of straddles some traditional processes and techniques, as well as contemporary processes and techniques. What really makes us excited, Gwenda, is this is going to sound a little hokey, but we're a gallery of positivity. We are a sort of almost our counter revolution to art, which, obviously traditionally has a very important voice in social, political commentary, and obviously has a place in what is the cutting edge, what is the most forefront of the art world. Where our sensibilities lie is we want people to come into our gallery and be able to take a deep breath, relax, enjoy themselves. So we've got vibrant artists that are just putting out positivity, whether it be abstracts, landscapes, cityscapes, or portraiture. So lots of happy things to either energize you or give you some tranquility and peace.
Well, it's really great to hear you describe it. Thank you so much, BJ, for being on the show today and telling us about your gallery. And I look forward to visiting you. I hope others will find you in Richmond as well. You have a really distinctive voice, and best of luck to you in future years. I expect you'll be back in Miami at the Aqua Art Fair or others. Thanks again for joining me today, BJ. This is the Art Ambassador Radio Show. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce. We're coming to you from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Stay with us. We'll be right. Hello and welcome back to the Art Ambassador Radio Show. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce. We're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Today, we've been talking about the Miami Art Fairs. Art fairs have really changed the nature of the art world for art galleries, which also means there have been big changes for artists, because artists now are able to be collected by people all over the world through their galleries. The art fairs have brought out crowds of people and really maximized the interest in contemporary art. They've made collecting art a very social activity. They made it easier for collectors to learn and compare in one place, and bringing art to the buyer. Now, art, of course, still has to be shipped home, but that's easy to do. The other factor is that with more demand comes rises in prices, and prices have continually gone up over the past years. The art fairs have also caused a lot of competition from galleries to get into the fairs. As you can see, it's really desirable. The rewards for galleries are high, but it's expensive and a big risk. For collectors, the opportunities to find high-quality art from all over the world are unsurpassed at the art fairs. Seeing this level of art in person in Miami is like going to many museums all at once. So for artists who are represented by galleries at the art fair, they have a chance to get exposure from a highly sought-after audience. The art fair phenomenon has really created a welling up of interest in contemporary and modern art. I love to engage with art on my annual visits to Miami Art Week. As an artist agent, the world of galleries is my beat. Being able to see so many galleries together is an opportunity to scout out galleries and match artists. It's essential to my work as an agent. My work as an agent helps artists shorten the process of finding a gallery to represent their art. And it's my goal to find out what kind of art each gallery represents And as you can tell from our interviews today with Bernice Steinbaum and Mark Borghi and Jean-Luc Richard and BJ Kocen, they all have a different direction in their gallery. And each one of them knows very well what that direction is. When you're listening to the galleries, you can find out how they've defined it for themselves. And they've built a stable of artists around this direction. Usually it's based on what they themselves find the most appealing and important aesthetically. And it's always so interesting to find out how individual that is. For artists who are looking for a gallery for their art, it may not be so easy to recognize because you're thinking, oh, my art will fit in anywhere. I'd love to be in that gallery because I like the other art there, or I like the owner of the gallery, or I like the space. But it's really critical to determine the direction of a gallery before you submit your work to it. Now, I've mentioned this to other people before, other artists who are looking for galleries, and they just say, well, I think I'm just going to submit my work and see what happens. Well, honestly, I don't recommend that. I recommend that you be a little more strategic about it. I offer coaching and courses and services to artists who want to be more strategic. And I'd like to invite you, if you're interested, to go to the artambassador.net website and apply. We'll have a no obligation conversation and see where it goes. Thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to talking to you again and having you on the Art Ambassador radio show. I'm your host, Gwenda Joyce. We're coming to you live from the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. We'll be back next week. See